What's going on, YouTube? So today, as you can see at the top, we got Sharma joining us for some Gbpjpy fundamental analysis, as well as a little bit of my technical analysis. I'm going to try to participate in this video as much as I can, but she has definitely got the upper hand on me in this one. Sharma, you want to say hello, and then we'll get this thing rocking?
Thank you so much, Paul. Hello, everyone. Very excited to share the knowledge here and this collaboration. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I think we're going to have some fun. So let's dive into these charts.
All right. So first of all, we're gonna look at the technical perspective of this, and we're gonna start from the monthly time frame. That's usually how I do my analysis. And so we're just gonna mark up some major levels. What I like to do is when I'm creating my support and resistance, I like to cuff them against the candles. That way I can see exactly what levels are being rejected here.
All right, so what levels are we kind of looking at? Maybe
Yep, right there where your cursor was.
like 155 area.
Yeah. And then I'll round it up to 155, 300.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
And then we also have that support by 130 area,
130 flat.
a little bit lower. Right there, cuffed up against the candles, yep. And then again, rounding that up to 128, 400.
Okay, and what's the route?
It's pretty much so I can take a look at the numbers. I don't have to memorize like 128.382 or something like that. I can just memorize it. Okay, it's in the ballpark area of 155, 300 or 128, 400.
Okay, so I got you. It's more like so you can kind of memorize what the level it was.
Right. Yeah. And
Gotcha.
so pretty much you don't have to come back and you don't have to remember that, oh, I saw this level at 1 point or 128.352 or something.
Gotcha.
All right, and then from here, I'm marking up some minor resistance levels and support levels, and I pretty much narrow it down. By the time we get down to the lower time frames, we already know how price is reacting to these levels on higher time frames and what to look for.
Okay, so what level are we looking at? We're gonna be more
Uh,
recent level
yep, right there.
right there on the candle.
Yep, and then again, rounding it up to 144, 100. And then even here, it's really quick. Okay, this is a strong level. Why is it a strong level? If you look to the left, when price started dropping down from 155, 300, and they came back up to retrace it, it was respected as resistance. And then we saw a little bit of consolidation happening at that level before we finally shot up. And then again, it was respected as support before we finally broke through below it. So it's a strong level that reacted as support and resistance in the past, and currently it's reacting as a resistance.
Okay, is that gonna be it for the monthly then?
Yeah, and then that support on the bottom as well, right there. Yep.
We'll go 132, 750.
Yes, sir.
Or do you want a whole number?
No, that's fine. Yep, and then going down to the weekly time frame,
Is it a big enough
and
picture?
then yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Okay,
And then the current resistance that price is making,
right
so
here.
right there.
All
Yep.
right, and then you're on 700.
Oh yes. All right, so now we're narrowing it down. We're taking a look at, okay, why is this a strong resistance level and what is price doing here? And so the further back you go, the more confirmations you start getting at these levels. So if we look at what the current range here is that we're looking at, in the left, we see a huge wick to the downside on 2019, right? Right before 2019. That's a huge rejection of that level. And then after that, that's where price created support. When it broke through, we got that nice traditional break and retest and then continuation down. Again, when you take a look, that was a level that was being respected as support as well, right after 2020 when we got that break and then that doji close and continuation down. You get a fake out between April and July right there. Again, it was respected as support. Finally, breakthrough, you get that retest and price is continuing down. So now looking at the historical price, we see that we've already had that break and retest in May 2019, right? And we're seeing the same exact thing happening right now as well. Would you agree, Paul?
Yep, I agree. So we're
And
kind
now
of
we're
looking right here and right
yep,
here.
yep. And now
Gotcha.
we're coming down to that 132,750. Once that is broken, of course, we have that clean traffic coming down to the support zone of 128,400.
Gotcha.
And now, if we take a look at it, if for a visual representative, if you want to go ahead and draw a quick trend line, just that's how I show it to people, that trend line from the bottom wick, and then just draw it up for that bullish structure a little bit higher, because we did break that bullish structure right there. So we broke that structure of this 137 through 700, came down, just retested that level, and see how we're continuing back down.
Yep.
And so, from a fundamental perspective, when we broke that structure, first we broke that structure. Following that, we had the fundamentals of a no deal Brexit. That's when a lot of the Brexit talks were getting heated up from Boris Johnson and even the EU commissioner or commission president. And this is when we saw the internal market bill coming out. We saw the EU getting heated up about that because the internal market bill was violating the withdrawal agreement that the UK signed with the EU when it was leaving on January, beginning of this year, right? And so because of that heat up, there was potentially the bearish market sentiment here, negative sentiment so far from the investors as well, that if the EU is getting so heated up, because of this new bill that the UK introduced, then most likely there's going to be a no deal from both sides since there's a violation. And then we also saw we got threats basically from both sides, and we saw that the EU said take back that bill, or just get rid of it, or else there's going to be a lawsuit against the UK government, right? And as an ultimatum, the UK said, we're not going to do anything like that. Instead, they introduced that bill even in their parliaments, and then it started going to their House of Lords. So they were still continuing with the full process of finalizing a bill like that in the UK. And so that's where we saw that whole break of structure. We saw that retest coming back up, which was leading up to the October 15 deadline that Boris Johnson gave, where he said, I'm going to give until October 15th. Yep. October 15th, the talks were continuing until then. Then we saw the EU summit. That was on October 15th. That was the day one. And then October 16th, which was day two. So even though the deadline was October 15th, Boris Johnson said, there's an EU summit going on. Of course, they're going to be talking about Brexit. So I'm going to give you guys until Friday instead of Thursday, so October 16th, to kind of come up with whether or not you want to continue these talks, right? And then I'm going to make that decision based on whatever you guys talk about in this EU summit. After that, EU, in their conclusion, basically wrote that it's up to the UK to make the first step. This really pissed off, basically, or angered the UK here, because the way I tell my students to think about it is, for example, Paul, you and I are sitting at a table, right?
Okay.
You're telling me you're from the UK side, right? And I'm from the EU side. And you're saying, I want to leave the EU. Let's get some trade talks going. Let's figure this out. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. And then you leave January of 2020, and now it's almost November, and you haven't seen any intensifying talks from my side, quote, intensifying talks, right? And so in your perspective, in your eyes, it's that, okay, well, Sharma isn't really taking me seriously.
That's
Or the
exactly what
EU
I was
isn't,
just thinking. Yep.
right, that they're not taking me seriously, but you still stay at the table. Why would you do that? Because you see a deal happening at the end, right? Because you need the EU. And the reason why the UK needs the EU, first of all, from a geographic perspective, the UK is surrounded by EU countries, right? So that means that the UK cannot do a deal with any of those countries unless it has a trade deal with the EU, or it reaches out to those countries individually and they have a trade deal. But if there's already a trade or a talk going on with the EU as a whole with the UK, and there's no, confirmations, there's no trade deal, it's a lot of work for an individual country to go out of its way and try to have a talk with the UK and come up with some kind of a deal, right?
Yeah, that'd be a lot of
Second
work.
thing, right. And second thing is with the whole reputation that the reputation hit that the UK got from this internal market bill, because it again violated the withdrawal agreement. And when you're violating some of the one of the terms or some of the terms with an agreement that you've already signed to, that you've agreed to months back, it kind of takes a hit on your reputation, because now you're violating some agreements, right? And now when you're trying to do a deal with any other country, then they're going to have that same fear that, okay, you've done something like this with the EU before. What is stopping you from doing this to me? Right?
Gotcha.
So that's another hit to UK's reputation. So that's why, even from that perspective, it's going to be hard for UK to get a deal with individual companies in the EU or countries in the EU. Right. So from that perspective, second of all, EU and UK are one of the biggest trading partners for each other. And again, even in these talks, we're seeing one of the biggest topics or the sticky topics is fishing. And that's because 80% of the fishing industry, or the fishes that are being caught in the British waters, are being exported to the EU. So that is the access to British waters is a very important topic for very important topic for the EU, because they need to get access in the British waters so they can catch their, the majority of the fishes that they're getting, the 80% of the fishes from the British waters. And now, yesterday, we got the news that Germany came out and they said that they need London access, or they need a trade deal with London to get access to the British waters in order to catch those fishes. And also we're getting sentiment from the fishermen in the EU saying that they'd rather have a compromise deal than no deal, because if they don't have access to the British waters, that's going to be a huge hit to the EU fishing industry. And that's pretty much going to not completely take out, but it's going to be very detrimental to the profits that are going to be coming into the fishing industry.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And
Go ahead.
yeah, so from that perspective, economically and even geographically, the UK needs the EU, but EU also needs the UK, because they have citizens from both parties living in their country. So there are citizens from the UK that are living in the EU, and there are EU citizens living in the UK as well. So we're already seeing certain banks and the EU cutting off UK services to the UK citizens, and the same thing happening in the UK as well. So we're seeing a little bit of that conflict going on as well.
Okay. So, what are we kind of expecting? So now we kind of broke our trend line we drew.
Right.
And from a technical, I think we should be returning to these lows. So like the 128, 400 area, maybe get into this wick here. Technically,
Right.
we had bullish structure. Now it looks like we're heading into bearish structure.
Right.
Fundamentally, is that lining up with what you're getting on your end?
So even from a fundamental perspective, this entire time we're getting Boris Johnson saying, get ready for a no deal, get ready for a no deal, even though he says that he's prepared, or the country UK is prepared for a no deal, they're really not. And we're seeing that sentiment from the British citizens themselves, because they understand how big of a hit that no deal is going to be to the UK economy. So if that happens, and plus we have COVID going on too, right? So COVID is affecting almost every major country and even minor country. So now UK is getting ready to go into another lockdown starting early as next week. So we just had this news come out about an hour ago, where up until this point, the UK was just applying stricter restrictions with limiting gatherings to almost like 6 people, and then going down to only households. We're seeing restaurants and pubs and all of that close down early. We're also seeing a lot of a rise in the unemployment as well, right? So with all of that, with COVID and negative Brexit news, even if there is a no deal, we can definitely see that break of this 132 750 to the downside, coming down to 128 400, or even 124 straight.
Gotcha. So then COVID should probably continue to drive it down, or is that just going to be more uncertainty kind of going into it?
So COVID, with the news of a new lockdown, is definitely going to drive it down. One of the key things or levels that we want to see break first is if we look to the left, it's going to be uh, the support. Yeah, the support right here that needs to be broken. So if you make a line right there, a horizontal line, we could take a look at what's happening here to the left here as well. Yeah, so if you that's a support, and if you look to the left, it has been acting as a resistance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look further to the left, there's rejections of resistance right before that huge fake out to the upside.
Yep.
And then also it acted as support and again resistance right before that.
Yep.
Right there, support. Yep.
Yep.
And so now we need to see a break of that level. Once that level is broken, we're definitely coming down.
Gotcha.
And so the important next week is going to be very important, and even coming into the following week, because the deadline for Brexit talks that has been given by the EU now is mid-November, early to mid-November. And that is because they need to have some kind of a deal so they can present that deal to their respective parliaments, and so they can have any sort of ratification that they need in order to finalize a deal by the end of December, because December 31st is the very deadline, and that's the deadline for the transition period for the UK as well in regards to Brexit. And so if they don't have a deal by, let's say, next week or mid-November, which is the following week, then both parties are going to have to trade on World Trade Organization terms, which means high tariffs for both of them. And high tariffs means a lot of the companies in the UK are already prepping to move out and relocate so they can kind of avoid the high tariffs that they're going to have to face.
Gotcha. um, is it anything else you wanna go over, or is that kind of breaking down everything for what's going on for the pound yen?
That's pretty much it. Oh, another thing is also the election that we have, the US election next week. Of course, we see that Biden and Trump both have opposing views of what they want to do. If Trump is reelected, there's going to be, of course, a continuation of a lot of stuff that he's already doing. And even with that, it will affect some of this Brexit news here as well, because we are starting to see that sentiment and a lot of the investment firms coming out and analysts and economists saying that Boris Johnson is pretty much waiting for the US election result, because if Trump wins, then most likely he's going to be okay with a no deal, because Trump is also a supporter of Brexit. And so that means that the UK is already turning to the US for a trade deal, but even that US UK trade deal kind of depends on who wins here. Because if Trump wins, then he's going to be okay. Then Johnson is going to be okay with no deal, and he's going to go ahead and move forward with the US UK trade deal. And of course, Trump is going to support that. On the other hand, if Biden wins, then the UK is not that big of a priority to the Biden administration. It's going to be the EU. So they rather give priority to the EU-US trade deal than the UK-US trade deal.
That's good to know. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
So that's another thing why it's very important next 2 weeks from a fundamental perspective in regards to Brexit and even the US election.
Yeah, that's gonna have a really big impact,
Right.
even
And
technically too, to really drive price one way or the
right.
other.
And the key thing here with all these fundamentals coming out, almost every day we're seeing something new with Brexit, right? So the key thing here to see from a technical perspective is seeing whether or not on these daily and 4-hour timeframes, the highs and the lows of these candles are being broken, right? Because we still see those small hints. We are still seeing hints of that bearish sentiment in the market for these EJ and even GJ sales here.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So,
And again, just waiting for that minor support and resistance being retested, and then continuation down as we see it happening right now.
so like this level here, or the 137,700 we looking at?
That level right there. So if you, yeah, so
Like
if you create like a
136?
line, a little bit lower than that, right there.
800
And
pretty much.
yes, and that is because as soon as price broke that bullish structure, we see that little bit of consolidation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so with that consolidation, that level is being respected as support. We finally broke through it. As soon as it broke through, again, that classic break and retest to the upside. But again, that entire time, this 135,800 level was being respected as support. Once it broke through, even today, we see a retest of that level, but still candles closing below it.
Yep. So it's kind of starting to turn into a resistance for us then.
Right. And then again, continuation to the downside, potentially coming down to this 132,750 area.
Yep, 100%. So we could say technically, as long as this level holds as resistance, we should start falling down to that 133,550. But if we get
Right.
back above here and we start making support, we're probably going to push back up to that 137,700.
Right. And the only time I would really even consider buys here is just above 136. Do you see the resistance being formed for this consolidation
Mm-hmm.
right when price broke? So so break above that level is exactly when I would be looking or even considering buys here. Until then, Gbpjpy here is a sell and it's being supported by the fundamentals, and those fundamentals are kind of fueling these bearish market sentiment as well.
Gotcha. You have anything else you want to add? Otherwise, I'm going to let you give your shout outs, where people can reach you, how they can find you, contact you, and then we
Yeah,
will wrap
so
this up.
this is pretty much it. All I'm gonna say is for the next 2 weeks, definitely just watch out for those fundamentals. Definitely, and the key thing is again, when you're reading these fundamentals, think about it as an investor, as a major investor yourself. Would you want to invest in a country that you know is going to be weak? Because if, let's say, there's no deal, then again, UK is kind of left on its own unless it finds other trading partners, right? And those trading partners are going to have to put in the same amount of money or even more that the EU has been putting in the UK economy, whether that's from trade deals, whether it's from just trading overall or investments, whatever it may be. You want to think about it as from an investor perspective. Would you want to invest in a country like that? And if not, then you pretty much have your answer. And if you're thinking that, then 100%, there's a lot of other people, the majority of other people are going to be thinking the same exact thing here.
Awesome.
And for
And then you want to
yeah,
tell people how they can reach you and how they can get this
yes.
knowledge you got, how they can learn?
Yeah, so my primary account is on my Instagram, Sharma FX. And over there, I'm posting a lot of my trades. You'll see a lot of my trades on my stories, and then I'm also making posts about them. But if you just go through my Instagram page, you'll most likely get a lot of the information that I'm already talking about here.
And then do you have any sort of group they can kind of join to learn from you, or
Yeah,
anything
so
you want to promote?
I do have a mentorship group, Sharma FX. You'll see the link in my bio if you go on my Instagram. And I pretty much just teach the same exact thing that I just talked about here, fundamentals, and also understanding how these high impact fundamentals impact low impact fundamentals, and how does all of that play together. Because again, low impact fundamentals are just as important. If anything, they're your forecasters for those high impact fundamentals. And also, how do you put together your market sentiment and get that kind of not so perfect, but how do you catch that nice trade to the upside or downside with the highest risk to reward?
Beautiful. Hi, YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully, we were able to pick up some really good knowledge that Sharma dropped. I will put her Instagram in the bio if you want to go check her out and start chatting her up. I highly recommend you do. She's very good at what she does. And maybe we'll get her on in the future one day.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Paul.
Yep. See you guys later.